Welcome to the self-learning platform by Dr. Sushma Singh. Today we start Unit 3, Nature and Forms of Conflict, Intrastate, Interstate and Global. And we are going to discuss global wars. The concept of global conflict can be understood in different ways. Since we have focused on war, which is the extreme manifestation of interstate conflict. A similar treatment is according to this concept. Accordingly, our focus is on global war, which is treated as a quantitative extension of a local war into continental propositions, and then it spread beyond. Just as the wars of Europe in the 18th and 19th century shaped into the First and Second World War, so the perspective conflagrations of this century have the potential to become global. While the threat of superpower Armageddon was itself a possibility during the Cold War years, the transfers of nuclear and other highly destructive weapons, the extension of Cold War alliances into local and regional quarrels, posed the challenge of local wars getting out of control. In the case of Korean and Vietnam wars, each of the superpowers were almost directly aligned with the original belligerents, and wider ideological confrontation was a factor that foreboded a global war. Fortunately, the very fear of the globalized conflict restrained the superpowers from directly joining these conflicts. The superpower balance of terror, as founded on the deterrence doctrine, was instrumental in this process of restraint. In many other instances, too, the alliance relationship of the big powers with local powers provided the probability for local wars like the Israel Arab conflict, the anti colonial conflict in the northern and southern African regions, and the Sino Indian War escalating into global wars. This is also termed as the outcome of new post war linkage patterns. The point is the qualitative dimensions of global wars. Apart from the extension of local or regional war, the stage for global war is much more directly set by the nature of contemporary weapons. Simply put, this is an outcome of global weapons and global strategies. For the devastating capacity of nuclear weapons and the global strategies devised to take advantage of these capabilities followed as an inevitable corollary. One can easily understand how any war could quickly become global, at least one with direct global effects. One should add to this the assumption of global interest by the superpowers. Because of the fear of reciprocal reach of the enemy, the superpowers frequently extended their scrutiny perimeters, almost making the ends of the earth as coming under their defense interest. Thus, US strategists claimed that the USA has worldwide vital interests and should ensure that it has the capacity to protect them all. The next topic is nuclear weapons and cascades of consequences. Because the factor of nuclear weapons is the independent variable in the conversation of wars into global wars. As the number of nuclear weapon states increase de facto, the global war phenomena is brought all the more near. Jonathan Schell, in his recent volume, The Unfinished 20th Century, highlights this point. Thus, a global drama in which decisions regarding nuclear arms in any part of the world touches off cascades of consequences throughout the world. That is, as nuclear weapons are acquired by states involved in regional conflicts, so do global war threats increase. Even though the Cold War scenario may no longer be as relevant as before, the very emergence of a single superpower, the USA, only further engenders the claim for global interest. Many critics say that the USA now affirms such claims with the self-proclaimed role of the world policeman, especially after 9/11. Its assumption of the leadership of the war against international terrorism confers some credibility to this claim. But this claim is now joined to another claim of installing democratic regimes in other parts of the globe. Now, the US defense and foreign policies are unabashedly based on the assertion that, as the single major power, its paramount interests are global and its economic and military capabilities have the necessary global reach to protect its claims and interests. Now, the next point is international terrorism, a trigger for global war. Even though international terrorism does not originate only with the Al Qaeda's perpetrating attack on US locations on September 11, 2001, it did symbolize the high watermark of the phenomena as constituting a true global threat. The UN General Assembly defined global terrorism as criminal acts intended or calculated to provoke a state of terror in the general public, a group of persons, or particular persons for political purposes. Whatever the considerations of a political, philosophical, ideological, racial, ethnic, religious, or other nature that may be invoked to justify them. Given this definition from the world body itself, the global potential of terrorism can be clearly assessed. The operations of terrorism are mostly anonymous, but its effects are manifest. The nature of international terrorism can be described as one with center anywhere and circumference everywhere. Two rather paradoxically opposite implications for global war flow from this threat. First, the imminent possibility of terrorist groups acquiring nuclear devices and either using them or blackmailing with threats of their use create horrendous perspective. Secondly, the response to this threat should also cause concern. The US response to 9/11 has been one of the mix of motives in which exploiting the threat of international terrorism has been conspicuously evident. The vital complexities of global war are thus further complicated by terrorism. The next point is clash of civilizations and global wars. A new perspective on global scale confrontation appeared in the shape of the idea of clash of civilization, propounded by Samuel Huntington in 1993. This idea holds that economic and ideological antagonism in the 19th and 20th century will be overtaken by antagonism over culture and cultural identity. Nation states will remain the most powerful actors in the world, but the principal conflicts of global politics will occur between nations and groups of civilization. He further stressed that the clash of civilization will dominate global politics. The fault line between the civilization will be the battle line of future. Huntington may have derived this idea from the increasing hostility between the Islamic world and the US led Western states as underscored by Gulf War in 1990 and the rise of China as a candidate superpower perceived as a potential challenge to the US. The cultural and civilizational dimension of contemporary regions are no longer the same as centuries ago, and Huntington is severely criticized for overstating this theory. His critics have argued that the world's future fault line will fall not between the major states or civilizations, but between the growing nexus of democratic market oriented societies and those holdout states that have ensured democracy or define the world community in other ways. In this view, it is these holdout states that have access to weapons of mass destruction, which are likely to trigger wars with global ramifications. This reading of the cause of future wars formulated by the US during the Clinton presidency is now extended by the neoconservatives in the Bush administration, targeting international terrorism and the so called rogue states and seeking to deliberately install democracy worldwide, if necessary, by war. Now let us discuss the persistence of uncertainty about its existence. The foregoing analysis of the origins and theories of war only bring to a fore the grand dilemma of war as an organized human institution. On fundamental issues, there can be no finality as to precise causes or solutions. Perhaps, as in the case of all major issues pertaining to the human conditions, only approximations to truth are possible. The prevailing uncertainty can be illustrated by referring to two apparently diametrically opposite views by eminent scholars. Michael Howard, the foremost historian and theoretician of war, in his recent book, The Invention of Peace in 2000, says that the pursuit of peace is an artificial pursuit with no certainty of final success. Yet, with the value of humanism and enlightenment, this pursuit can only hope to succeed. Margaret Mead, the renowned anthropologist, on the contrary, says that it is war, not peace, that is a human invention. Putting the insights gathered from the studying diverse human communities, she poses the question in her book, War is the only an invention, not a biological necessity. In 1940s, whether war is a biological necessity, a sociological inevitability, or just a bad invention. With refreshing hope, she concludes, if we despair over the ways in which war seems such an ingrained habit of most of the human race, we can take comfort from the fact that a poor invention will usually give place to a better invention. Is humankind now nearer the goal of that better invention which Mead mentioned and the Michael Howard too did not despair of? Now let us sum up the unit. In this unit, we have discussed the nature and forms of intrastate, interstate, and global conflicts. In our discussion on the sources of intrastate or intra-societal conflict, we observed that in our daily courses of human activity, dissatisfaction and conflicts keep on rising in matters relating to distribution of property, material resources, social status, or recognition. While most of the intra-societal conflicts are resolved within social groups, when they assume serious dimensions, the state, the highest organization within a society, steps in to manage and resolve them. The states have a wide infrastructural network to deal with a range of intra-societal conflicts, from family quarrels which assume violent proportion to the group violence to insurrection and revolutionary violence. As we saw, the state relies on various mechanisms, including the use of force to cope with such conflicts. Some macro level conflicts may become uncontainable and threatens the very existence of the state. Such challenges are more frequent in the developing countries, though developed or mature societies are not altogether free from severe intrastate conflict. States which are incapable of sustaining are described as fragile states or failed states. The civil society has an important role in conflict prevention, containment, and resolution, apart from the fact that the state cannot always function effectively in managing conflict, which gives a push and legitimacy for the activities of the civil society networks is the spread of the idea of participatory democracy. As we noted, there has been a major transformation in the civil society state relationship in the last 3 centuries. In recent times, the recession of state from some of the earlier functions, leaving large number of people vulnerable to social and economic distress, has led to the assertion of the civil society, both in theory and practice. The unit also examined interstate conflict, particularly focusing on the extreme manifestations of such conflict, that is, war. This section reflected on some of the important approaches for the understanding of study of war, while the thrust has been on the comprehensive analysis of conflict by words and of war of Clausewitz. Other important philosophical approaches and theories of war find mention here. The unit also examines global conflict, a new term that has acquired currency in recent times. While the concept has varied connotations, here it is treated as a quantitative extension of the extreme form of interstate conflict war. The main theories and causes of global war find mention here. Now we want to wind up this lecture and we have come to the end of the unit. Thank you so much for your attention.